today's video, we are going to be traveling back in time to the medieval era. What? And then conquering it. There will be machine guns versus heavy armored knights, catapults versus Apache helicopters, and more large-scale battles between the modern US Army and the medieval kingdoms. Be sure to stay tuned till the end of the video for a giveaway, and let's find out if the medieval army can take on the might of modern weaponry. This is President of the Brick Knighted States, Bo Jiden. And this is his dog, Bjork. Now, Bo Jiden here is pretty ticked off, you could say. And that's because his wife, Bill Jiden, was zombified during the apocalypse. That was due to this man, Dr. Schlieffen, the mad scientist who has a bit of a knack for accidentally mass killing civilians.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
His experiments are numerous. The research and development of nuclear weaponry, the accidental releasing of chemical weaponry, the recreation and then release of thousands of species of prehistoric dinosaurs. And that's how we get to here. The modern day zombie virus caused by Dr. Schlieffen. Let's just say President Bo is not too happy about this. Bo and the Secret Service come knocking on Dr. Schlieffen's door. FBI, open up! And they swiftly arrest the mad scientist, but he has successfully escaped prison multiple times before, and sending him to the asylum never really works, because the man simply has no empathy, and therapy's just a lost cause on him. So this time, Bo Jiden decided to just stick Dr. Schlieffen in the middle of the ocean.
How are you? I am under the water. Please help me.
But sadly, his top advisor stepped in and informed him this could be a war crime, which Jeff here has no problem with. But it might not look good for the president, so he built him a small island to live on. So now Dr. Schlieffen can live on this small deserted island with his homie Napoleon for the rest of his life. But there's still the matter of Schlieffen's laboratory. The government begins the investigation of the lab. There are DNA splicers, hardcode servers, strange liquid inside of a tube, and testing chambers. But one particular device caught Bo Jiden's attention. A strange golden platform attached to a console with dials where you could input a date. He had discovered Dr. Schlieffen's time machine. The president realizes that this could be an amazing way to get resources from the past and put them into the future. We're talking about oil, baby.
Knock, knock, it's the United States of America, and I hear you guys got oil.
So the president goes to the federal prison and picks out a Russian spy. He gives him a rusty old gun and a hazmat suit and places him upon a time machine. He is a guinea pig to see if the machine actually works. The Russian POW reappears in an undeveloped forest, but he quickly realizes that he is not alone here. He's been sent back to medieval times.
Oh no. What's this? Oh no. Oh god. No, that's my book! What?
He tries in vain to communicate with these knights, but sadly these are Lion's Knights, who speak English and not Russian. And their leader is the prince, who quite frankly is a little bit bullheaded. He steps forward bravely to the odd alien-looking stranger and slices off his head, killing the Russian instantly. The Lion Knights move to investigate this platform. They saw the strange man come out of it, but now it just lay dormant. But on the other side, Bo Jiden waits impatiently. He's getting annoyed, but he gave the Russian 1 hour to get back and then he'd set them free. In the distant past, the young prince sends his knight Gerald to tell the Lion's Knight King of what happened here. He's wary of these intruders, and he wants reinforcements. Bo Jiden no longer thinks the Russian's coming back, so he calls in a heavy weapons trooper. The plan, teleport him in and let him wreak havoc on whoever's on the other side. The trooper readies himself and teleports to the other side. The first thing he sees is the prince, now backed up by a garrison of spearmen reinforcements from a nearby fort. He then notices the decapitated Russian body, and that's enough for him. He starts spamming out grenade launcher fire. The Juggernaut has now created a wasteland. The prince and his men have now perished under the might of modern military arms. And now Bo Jiden has arrived. In the last few months of his presidency, he's declaring war on the medieval times.
Dad, you dropped your fork. Dad, you can't see without those. What are you doing? Dad, no!
Meanwhile, Sir Gerald has made it back to the Lion's Night Castle. The drawbridge is lowered, and the gate raised. Gerald is greeted by the gods. He hastily requests a meeting with the king. Sir Gerald quickly explains what has become of the prince, and the king is actually kind of delighted. He really hated his son. Gerald really wasn't that surprised. He also didn't like the prince all that much. When he was alive, he had continuously stolen Gerald's pretzels. Never touch another man's pretzels. But the king did have some concerns. There was one thing he did love. Despite her hideous looks, he was absolutely enchanted with the queen, and he would valiantly ride into battle if it meant keeping her safe. So the king went to his study, and he did something he never dreamt would happen before. He took up a quill and wrote a call to arms to the other medieval kings. Well, except for that one furry one, Richard the Lionheart. He was maybe a little too into lions.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It was unsettling. With Sir Gerald riding off to try and recruit the other kingdoms into this modern versus medieval war, the king now called his bannermen, assembling the Lion Knight's army. Let's help him out with that. The king's army hath now been rallied. Hundreds of Lion's Knight soldiers are now ready for war. From the elite knights to the loyal foot soldiers, and even the jester may take part. I'm the Joker, baby! But if the enemy really is all-powerful wizards, then support from the other kingdoms is essential. Speaking of the enemy, Bo Jiden has begun assembling more US military soldiers through the teleportation time machine. He also discovered that the time machine is fully capable of bringing supplies through it. So he's begun to stockpile weapons and munitions in order to build a military base. First, he establishes a field outpost so his generals and intelligence agencies have a place to operate from. He then constructs a sniper's nest so they can protect the base from afar. He also deployed roadblocks, barbed wire, and a .50 caliber machine gun.
I am heavy weapons guy.
US Army was prepared for war, and more men were being shuttled in by the hour, along with vehicles. Magnifique! Meanwhile, at the Lion's Night field camp, kings were beginning to arrive, answering the call for an alliance. The first to arrive were the loyal Castle Knights, who had allied with the Lion's Knights on many an occasion. Then came the Gilded King, the richest of the Lego kingdoms, whose wealth would help fund the war against the alien intruders. That money would be helpful for the alliance in hiring the Mercenary King, the king whose only allegiance is money and contracts out his soldiers for other people's wars. And speaking of mercenaries, the Viking King and his band of brigands wouldn't be caught missing out on any potential plundering of the following war.
That's got to be the best part I've ever seen.
The King of the Bull Knights has also arrived, lending his brute force barbarians to the fight, as did the Scorpion King, the Red Queen, the Old Dragon King, the New Dragon King, and much to the surprise of the Lion's Night King, he heard the sound of marching in the distance. The Lion's Knight's ancient foe, the Black Falcon Knights, had arrived with hundreds of Black Falcon swordsmen standing at the ready to march to war. Despite their lifelong beef, the Black Falcons were ready to save the medieval world.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And what was equally surprising was the arrival of the Forest King and Queen, a warrior tribe who only came out of the dark woods in times of real peril, and they were ready to get to work. They assembled their crew of elite forest rangers, highly trained bowmen and women, who began sneaking around in the bushes, working on spotting the enemy military's movements, and when they would see an opportunity, they would fire, pelting unsuspecting US Army soldiers with arrows and taking them out. Army generals were none too happy about their soldiers getting guerrilla warfared. There was still a little trauma there from Vietnam. So the modern generals went ahead and decided to scramble a couple of F-15 birds, and those guerrilla warfare fighters ceased to exist. But then came the rhythm of the warriors of the sea, the Vikings. In their Viking longship, were sailing out to war against the US Army. They had a large crew stacked within the ship. They were moving full sail ahead, trying to outmaneuver and outflank the men who to them were alien invaders. But James, the sonar captain, was able to see them coming from miles away. And so the newly teleported in battleship was prepared for the Viking attack. And so they aimed the main gun and simply fired. Let's just say things weren't looking too good for him. While the Vikings died in the ocean, the Castle King was assembling his army. They assembled on horseback, preparing for a devastating charge against the modern military. Behind them, the other honorable factions prepared to clean up after their charge. The new Dragon Knights, the old Dragon Knights, as well as the Golden Kingdom. These kingdoms felt as though upfront confrontation was the only honorable way to do battle. So the Castle Knights' charge began, and the US Army readied their 50 cal and let her rip. The Castle Knights were slaughtered in an instant. Seeing this, the infantry threw down their weapons and made haste to flee. A mass exodus of soldiers trying to escape these magical bullets. But the US soldiers were not going to let them get away that easily. 5 of the medieval armies were now completely wiped out. The power of the modern military seemed far too much to overcome. So 3 of the kings secretly met with Bo-Jiden, the Scorpion King, the Mercenary King, and the Bull Knight King. They offered to give up their armies as well as all their riches to this magical old man. Bo-Jiden readily accepted once he saw the gold. After all, they were here for some money.
Knock, knock, here you guys got oil.
And then the 3 kings brought forward their entirely unarmed army of mercenaries, bull knights, and scorpion knights. Over half of the total medieval army has now either surrendered or died. The modern military is dominating the battlefield. The final 2 armies now left standing were the Lion's Knights, as well as the Black Falcon Knights. The 2 kings knew that they could not give up this war, but at the same time, they couldn't send their soldiers in using the same tactics as before. It was a slaughter out there against these magicians. So for the next 24 hours, these 2 men retreated into the command tent, plotting their next move.
A few moments later.
Once they re-emerged, they had an idea of what they were going to do. First things first, the Lion's Knights would start constructing siege machines. They transport in goods from the outlying kingdoms. Hammers, nails, wood, metal, and steel. The essentials for crafting. Their first prototype of siege tower, frankly, wasn't that intimidating.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
The king ordered the carpenters to redo it, and the second outcome was a little bit better. A much more towering siege engine. But the king was not satisfied. They went even larger with the next model, adding firing doors, a drawbridge at the top, and a sniper's nest. Despite this bad Larry staggering over the minifigure army, the king thought they could go bigger. But honestly, supplies were kind of running out, and the result was an incredibly messy, large-scale siege tower. And while it did technically serve its purpose, there were fears of it being highly destructible.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
They quickly reverted back to this old design. They also construct 2 simplistic battering ram designs. Simply large logs, reinforced with metal, to swing out. As well as one far more intricate battering ram design with shielded plate armor at the top, providing cover for the men pushing it. Ballistas are crafted with deadly harpoons at the front to add range to the army. They have far greater range as well, in the form of large-scale catapults, capable of hurling massive tonnage straight into the sky. The The Lion's Knight King puts his new toys into action, while the Black Falcon King prepares the troopers for all-out war. He will be doing logistical work, while the Lion's Knight King goes through deadly tactics. They place their battering rams in densely populated forest areas, and then they wait for APCs to unsuspectingly drive through, and then they hit them with the ram. And when crew members shuffle out to check on what happened, they're subject to absolutely brutal ambushes. Next, they took their siege towers and wheeled them into view of the American sniper tower. The sniper attempted to fire, but the bullets ricocheted off of the reinforced metal drawbridge. At which point, a group of crossbowmen climbed up to the bridge and let loose their hailstorm. US pilot Eminem fired up his helicopter, ready to hail strike the oncoming siege tower. But as he booted up the engines, ballista struck the helicopter, jamming the engine, blowing it up, immobilizing Eminem's helicopter. The ballista had been successful, but they weren't out of the woods yet. US artillery guns prepared to respond with fire, calibrating their weapons, when all of a sudden, large boulders rained on their parade. The catapults had entered the chat. Behind that smile, Biden was beginning to get furious. Casualties were mounting to astronomical rates against such a primitive enemy, so he did what any first world leader would do. He grabbed a remote control and a laptop and began drone warfare. He annihilated the siege weapons the Lion Knights had built. While the Lion's Knight King continued the struggle, the Black Falcon King was producing arms. He had his blacksmiths working around the clock to craft new weaponry and armor for his men. He created heavily reinforced metal shields and swords, war clubs, morning stars, glaives, heavy armor sets, lighter, more agile armor sets. Eventually, they had so much weaponry, they were able to cart it over to the front lines to equip their armies. The kings were getting desperate at this point, and this newly improved armor would be the last of their tricks. With reports of these drone strikes coming in, they knew they had to act now, or face the full might of the US military. So that's exactly what they did. They marched forward a solid line of crossbowmen, who took aim and fired, killing numerous soldiers, even killing the 50 cal gunner. But then the remaining US Army soldiers began to open up. The lightly armored crossbowmen died in an instant, but it wasn't over yet. Immediately behind them charged the newly armored knights. Oh no! US gunners attempted to fire at them, but the armor and shields was so thick with steel that most of the shots bounced straight off. These troopers were upon them, full charging the modern army, killing countless soldiers. Many heavily armored troopers did go down, but they were finally delivering killer blows to the US forces until the general hopped on to the heavy grenade launcher, which struck down droves of the attackers. The heavy reinforcement wave was dead, but the two kings were ready for this. They still had the Black Falcon swordsmen, hundreds of soldiers on the march ready to charge. Bo Jiden and his two other remaining soldiers knew that even with the ammunition they had, the enemy force charging them would overwhelm them eventually. The three men quickly hopped onto the time machine and scattered to the wind. The kings rejoiced. They had somehow managed to get rid of these strange alien invaders. But not before all of the kingdoms of medieval Lego had suffered thousands of losses.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
Back in modern day, Bo Jiden was none too happy. So he decided sending the past a little present as a farewell gift would be a-okay. He armed a nuke and sent it back. Medieval kings had no idea what this small metal device was. And at the end of the day, every last medieval soldier had died. The past had been permanently scarred. But what effect would this have on the future? Thanks for watching, boys! For today's giveaway, we're going to be giving away 2 Black Falcon Knights, 2 Lion's Knights, and 2 custom modern US soldiers. All you gotta do to enter in to win this giveaway is hit that like button, subscribe with notifications turned on, and comment down below who you think would win in a battle. The modern army or medieval army. Or comment down below what you think would happen in the future due to the nuke in medieval times. Thanks for watching, bye!